Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar. We are officially live and we're excited to have you joining for the session. Before I introduce our lovely guest speaker, Sally, who we have here today, and I would like to share a bit an intro about the session to give you some context and set the scene. So, what you have seen obviously in the title, we are talking about the upcoming summer high season, which is pretty much the most important period of the year for your business. And we see currently a lot of changes in traveler behaviors, in booking behaviors, also due to these ongoing, continuing uncertainties in regards to economic development or also geopolitical uncertainties. So, our mission for today is very clear. We want to set you up for success, share some data, share some trends, and to give you some tips on how to manage and navigate everything. And of course, how better to do that than with an expert? So we have Sally here today. Sally, I'm super excited that you're here. I give you quickly the floor to say something about you and introduce yourself.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me as well. So it's a pleasure to be here. Consider me your data friend. Everyone on this webinar, consider me a contact that you can reach out to. So my name's Sally Henry. I've been in the industry over 25 years, so almost 20 years working for a large property manager. So I've been in your shoes and almost 3.5 years working for Key Data. And I'll tell you a little bit more, but all the data that I share today will be shared afterwards. But equally, please connect with me on LinkedIn and follow up with any questions. I'm going to be delivering averages, and I'm sure you'll be wanting to know some more specifics for your geography. So please do feel free to reach out. So delighted to be here. Thank you for having me.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Sally. And yeah, there are exciting information to be shared. Just some organizational things before we dive deep into it. And our question is, how often do you use actually market data to make pricing or strategy decisions? So feel free on the right side, on the poll, to enter and vote. I see the first one's coming in. Good. It's working.
I see
Just
Mandy
some.
from the chat, a cave house in Spain. That sounds super exciting. You need to know what that is.
Nice. Yeah, we have a very nice, diverse community with a lot of lovely places in many different countries.
And Stephanie from
Yeah.
sunny Somerset. It's beautiful in the UK today. So
Yeah, I see some votes that some use really regular data, some most rely on experience. So I think we have quite a diverse mix of participants. The wider poll is still continuing. We get some more data. Sally, I think it gives you a nice feeling of where we stand, a diverse audience. And I'm very keen to hear what you brought with us today and what the tips are for our audience.
yeah, absolutely. Well, listen, let me take you through. I appreciate there's going to be a range of data experts, people that live, breathe, and die data, and others that are just tiptoeing into data. There's never a better time to start. And I'm going to try and share some of the sentiment around data and how we should try and use data in our business, but also not expect everyone to become a data geek like me overnight. So it's a journey that we'll take you on. So just a little bit, first of all, about key data and how we get our data, because I'm going to share some trends today that are a little bit more granular than we normally see from data companies. And that's because we integrate with property management systems and property managers all around the world, and we pull in direct reservation data, which means we can start to see, is it a guest booking as opposed to an owner stay? What channel have they booked on? Because that's really important. How much have they actually paid? So we're going to share some of these insights because that tells a much deeper story about what's happening for your and like the daily challenges that you're all facing. So we take all this data. We do also scrape Airbnb and Verbo. We do around 50 million API calls a day, and we normalize all that data. So the data that I present with you today is from our directly integrated clients. It's all been cleaned, normalized, like for like, and you'll see some really interesting trends. And what I'd love to know within your community is, are you resonating? Are you seeing the same trends? If so, how can we help you understand what the market's doing? Okay. So we're going to look, first of all, at the global landscape, just to give you a sense check of where our industry is actually at. It's just kind of a very top level. We don't often do this, but it's just always good to see in context what's happening around the world. Are there any lessons we need to be learning? Then we're going to look at some European metrics. I'm going to break them into two. We're going to have a quick look at summer winds of summer on your rev. If you're breaking it into two, a lot of people ask us, what data should I look at? And if you're going to just look at, just a couple of things a day, then it's these fundamental KPIs. We call that jargon, key performance indicators. So the things that are fundamental to your business. So on the left-hand side, we have what's almost called the cornerstones of your business, the market fundamentals. So it's your rates and your occupancy. So they are dictating whether you're having a good season or not. And we'll go through and look at each one in turn. When we look at rates and occupancy, when they're combined, we come up with a metric called revenue, RevPAR, revenue per available rental. And if you need one metric within your business to see how you're performing, that revenue figure is what you're taking home at the end when you're mixing your occupancy and your rates. It's one of the best metrics to look at. So we're going to have that on one side, super important. Then we're going to flip to what I look at, the traveler behavior. And this is where we're seeing some really different data trends coming through. And I think it's where it's causing property managers and hosts a lot of head scratching, a lot of asking around what's going on, like how long are people staying, when are they booking, how are they booking? And we're going to dive into that and try and help show you what we can see happening in the markets. All right. First of all, that importance between occupancy and rate, I can't overstress. If you're very new to using data, this is the one thing I try and make sure you take away with you today to say, okay, how can we make sure that we're getting the balance right? So generally, if your occupancy is soft, it might be time to look at your rates. It's not always, but it's quite a strong indicator that you might be overpriced. And that's when you need to go and look to see what your competitors are doing and feel how the market is around you. On the other side, if you're really, occupied really fast and you've got higher occupancy, there could be an opportunity to increase your rate. So it's a balance between the two. And it's not easy as we're seeing a later market, but that revenue, that RevPAR is what will tell you if you've got that balance right. So again, that balance between the two, never look at them in isolation, always look at them hand in hand and use that to track it in your business. Okay, so how are we looking? So we're going to look at the global landscape, and this is a continent level. So it's a really broad feel. But what we're doing, we're looking back to 2019, pre-COVID. This will probably be the last time I present data that goes back pre-COVID, because from 2023, we have what we call normalized data years. Like a lot of people talk about 2019 being the heyday before COVID and the disruption that caused. So what we can see here, we've got the if you like, the bold line on the top, which is Asia, and we can see what's happening there. Now, Asia, what we're doing when we're looking at pacing, when we say 2026 pacing, how are we doing this year compared to the same time last year? So it gives you a sense check of where we're at this year. So you can see the line. So Asia pacing 9% above. So in guest paid occupancy, they're seeing some strong growth in their guest bookings. Next down, we can see South America pacing at just plus 2%. We are in Europe, the dark blue. The dark blue at the bottom, we can see we had a slower recovery post-COVID as we came through from like 2020 and 2022. Let's come through. But you can see we've had this steady growth. We're pacing at +1, and we've had this steady growth. If we look at the flip side, so in the red is North America, which is a huge short-term rental market. And it's one we keep a close eye on to see are there any learnings. Often we follow suit. Now, actually, North America has had pressure in guest paid occupancy, and for the first time, it is pacing ahead in 2026. They've had 3 years of consistent negative, and that's because so much supply came into the market post-COVID. So a lot of it is around supply. So to give you a general feeling, Europe is moderately growing. We see some different behaviours across the continent. But let's flip to the rates, and we can see in that dark blue again, moderate growth for Europe. On the flip side, you can see that darkly gold of Asia is -17 in pacing. So we had that really strong occupancy growth on the slide before, but it's got lower rates. So we're seeing this balance across. But really, across the board, we're seeing really moderate increases or decreases, which indicates demand is pretty flat. So how do we help you get your share of that demand? When we look at the last one, that revenue, so we're mixing the two together. Once again, with the exception of Asia, whose rates have dragged down their revenue, we're seeing just 1 or 2 percentage points different. But Europe has got the steady trajectory up. So if we were looking, Europe is outperforming the rest of the world. So a shiny star, but it's marginal. And we need to make sure we're balancing those rates and occupancy so carefully. So the rest of the deck, we're going to get a little bit more granular and try and help you see how best to do that. So if we drop down into just Europe, and we've looked at what the world's doing, we can see moderate growth. And we can see that slow trajectory across from 2019 through to 2025. We've just got this marginal growth, and we're pacing just a little up. So 1.2% up so far this year. So it's in both occupancy and ADR. So it's a positive story, but it's not the heyday. We are not seeing rates climb as high as we'd like them to offset the operational costs. We are not seeing demand fly up, which is going to allow us to put those rates up. So it really is fine-tuning your particular strategy to make sure you can buy into this. And the growth is also tempered. We're seeing this hesitancy in the market right now. She obviously factored on that geopolitical environment that we're all having to navigate, those headlines, which are both around travel, about flight, and about the economic impact that some of the geopolitical issues are causing us. So if we take a look, and if we look at that dark line in the middle, we can see how we're looking at a quarterly basis. Obviously, we've already touched on summer. So if we look at Q3, which is July, August, and September of 2024 to 25, we have this stronger growth. And we can see actually we were up from 25 to 24. But you can see the occupancy difference when you look at it at a quarter, and you need to make sure that that's factored in to your expectations. So we can see in Q1, we actually grew 9% in guest paid occupancy in Europe across the board. Most of that was because of the way Easter fell 2 weeks early. So actually a lot of holidays opened up at the end of March, which allowed some additional bookings and revenue to come in March. And also January started off quite positively. So we'll dive into this in a minute. So effectively Q1, a good start, but Q2, we are pacing 4% down. So the earlier Easter hasn't helped at the time when that geopolitical uncertainty hits. We've seen a softer market as a result. So if you're sat there thinking, I'm feeling that it's tough right now, you're probably not alone. We are seeing a softer market in Q2 at the moment. Q3, which is our ever important summer arrivals, we know we're going to get occupancy right up. It's -2 right now. So it's not a disaster, but it's something we need to keep a close eye on. As the market's booking later, it's going to come and fill in your calendars a little bit later. The same with Q4. So I think the takeaway here is Q2 is softer everywhere. So you're possibly feeling it. So how do we try and make sure we get your demand, your share of that demand? We look on the other side, we look at the rates, and we can see that in Q1, we had that positive occupancy. We were +9, but rates were flat. So we clearly had a balance around price sensitivity. We weren't managing to grow the rates in Q1. We grew the occupancy. So we'll have positive RevPAR. And again, that price sensitivity, so Q2, we are seeing small growth in our rates, +2%, but equally it's not offsetting that demand, which is softer right now. Rates are holding strong for summer and they're holding strong for Q4. So rates will come down as we move through the season. And we'll take a look at that as we go through. So that corresponding RevPAR, Q1 +9. So we had a good start to the year. But Q2, that lower occupancy means that we are pacing down right now. Summer's looking at +1. So those rates are holding it up. So when we talk a little bit further about rates, getting your rates strong and not letting them drop too much right at the end as we get later is really important. We call like rate discipline, rate agility, being able to respond to the market, because it's what is keeping your revenue up right now. So strong start, weaker Q2. So all to try and navigate as we go through. We look at those Q1 arrivals, that's arrivals in January, February and March, and we look at it at a country level, we can see how it's starting to move through. So overall, we were +9% in occupancy growth in the first quarter of the year. And most markets are showing that growth as well. So you can see as we go through some of that percent, particularly I'd say Germany, from 25 to 26 for Q. When you're looking at data, how is it that we're actually looking like for like, making sure we're not looking at further on in the year. So France rebounded after a pretty turbulent 2024, hosting the Olympics. Should have been a golden egg, but it wasn't. It caused huge confusion and displacement around Paris. Spain and Germany delivering strong year-on-year growth for those Q1 arrivals. UK is more moderate. So we're seeing a more mature market there that is really sort of moderate, just showing really moderate growth across its portfolio. When we look at the average daily rates for those Q1 arrivals as well, we can see most showing moderate growth. We're pretty flat across Q1, if you remember, but Portugal really struggling with its rates this year, despite that soft occupancy growth. So what I will tell you, you might decide you'd prefer occupancy over rates or vice versa. That's fine. Just make sure it's a strategy rather than something you look back and realize afterwards. So you'll be at a particular stage for either your property or for your property management company. So understanding that trade-off is really important. And again, the UK is showing really moderate and more tempered growth. So how does that look with RevPAR? So when we're combining the two, most are showing up positive as we saw that just Portugal has rates are pulling down its rev. So before we dive into summer, because Q1 is done, it's dusted, and what lessons have we learned? Q2 is tougher, but summer is probably where we make or break the revenue for your business. So Kristen, I think we're going to ask a poll question here just to get a sense check for how we're feeling about summer.
Yes, indeed. On the right side, if you go to the poll icon, you see another poll question. We ask you the second question: what's your biggest challenge for the upcoming summer season? Getting enough bookings, pricing correctly, attracting international guests, managing multiple channels, or optimizing occupancy. As Sally said, it's all about also a strategy. Let's see where your biggest focus areas currently lay.
I think we need a drum roll, Christine, to find out how people are. Can you take like multiple? Can we take multiple ones?
Yeah, actually, it's a good question.
All of the above.
Yeah, it's pretty equal. Exactly. If I see now at the port, getting enough bookings, pricing correctly, it's a bit of everything.
Okay.
Similar, like when it comes to using data. Of course, there are the pricing tools which a lot of our hosts use, which is automated. Some are using additional data, some not. Same when it comes to summer. There's quite a diverse response.
Yeah, it's understandable. And I'm going to just go in at a country level just to give you a feel for summer arrivals. Right now, we still have a way to go. As ever, we need to be going into really granular locations and geographies to really understand. I'm just going to try and give you a sense check for what we're seeing across the broader data. Okay. So first of all, we're looking at arrivals from the 30th of June to the end of August. So really arrivals in July and August. We're just taking that, those two peak summer months where we see the real strong revenue come in. So if we look at France, first of all, guest paid occupancy is pacing down a little, so -8%. So we're seeing slightly softer occupancy for that summer arrivals. However, rates are pacing up, so over 5%. So rates are holding strong right now. And when you get the recording, you can dive in to see the exact metrics that sit behind here. So effectively, the RevPAR is +4. So if you're an operator in France and you're looking ahead to those peak revenue months where you have a lot of reliance coming in, you're currently pacing at +4 broadly across the range. However, the length of stay is contracting. This is something we're going to keep seeing. So the length of stay, and we're going to dive into this traveller behaviour soon, is something you need to really bear in mind because the revenue you need to protect in your summer arrivals will be impacted if people are staying for less time. Because just to stay still with your occupancy and fill your calendars, it means you're going to have to sell more bookings just to stay still. So length of stay is a really critical one at the moment as we're seeing it contract. And we'll dive into that a little bit after we've gone into some of these countries. The booking window is averaging out slightly longer, just by a day. That does not tell us the whole story, my friends, because what we're seeing is people are still booking early and they're booking very late. And the stuff in the middle is what is sort of hollowing out. So an average is useful for a lot of data. For booking window, I would suggest we discard that to a certain extent and let's go and look at the late market for you to see how we navigate that. So some in Germany, both occupancy up a little and those rates holding strong as we're seeing in France as well. So a steadier performance as we head in for summer arrivals. But again, that length of stay is shorter. We can see that in the red, minus just 1.4%. What we saw last year across Europe, as we got closer, length of stay contracts even more. And we saw that length of stay being much more prevalent in summer. So it's something to really keep an eye on. People booking earlier will be booking for longer and they'll have secured their summer break. People coming up to summer that haven't secured their booking yet will probably stay for less. They're not as organised, they've not put the time off. So again, it's just something to keep a really close eye on if I were you. But RevPAR plus 7.4 for those summer months as it stands. Now, Italy, they're seeing a softer summer right now. So their paid occupancy is down 4.5%. So quite a bit lower, a different performance. And their rates are plus 3.3. So not managing to push those rates up. They haven't got their occupancy. And again, length of stay is coming down a couple of percent. So RevPAR is negative in Italy. It's not fallen off the cliff. We're going to look across at Portugal and say we have concerns over the performance within Portugal this summer. Occupancy down 3% and rates down 5%. We saw that pressure on the rates already throughout the year. So this seems to be an adjustment. What I will say is different locations think it's okay because everyone around me is offering 7 nights or whatever it might be. We see displacement across different countries. So some people may move from Portugal to Spain to get what they want or vice versa. So if you're in a particular region, please be aware of other regions and how they might take your share if you're not offering what the guests want. So Portugal had got negative occupancy, ADR, and their length of stay is down 5.8%. So a real balance to get right for Portugal to make sure we bring in that revenue in the summer. So almost minus 8% in RevPAR for those really critical summer arrivals. And then the last couple we look at, so Spain. So Spain, we're seeing marginal occupancy growth is 0.3. So it's not strong, but rates holding up at 3.3. But once again, length of stay coming down. So positive RevPAR, but we can start to see a pattern for what we see. Demand's pretty flat. Rates are holding or wait where rates are holding. The RevPAR's positive, but the length of stay is coming down. And look at the UK, it's even more marginal. So occupancy +1, rates just at 1.2, length of stay coming down. So again, marginal positive RevPAR for summer, but that length of stay down. And that's a trend we continue to keep seeing. So gives you a sense check. If you're heading into summer, feeling demand's pretty flat, that's the story that we're seeing across the board. We're seeing length of stay contract, and we're seeing if we can hold rates, they'll keep your revenue strong. Okay. So now we're going to go into some of these really specific traveler trends. We're seeing a lot of these trends across the globe. So what we're seeing is we all want the perfect planner that books way in advance because they stay longer, they spend more, they book direct, they don't cancel, they've every intention of going. But then we go to the other side of the spectrum, sort of the more, we call them last minute Larry. They just book really late the week before. They'll tend to use the OTAs and they'll book potentially several properties and cancel the ones they don't want. And the data is saying that everyone is shifting to the right this year. So we love the planner, but we're going to have to cope with last minute Larry. And that's a fact. So I think in the past, we used to say, if it was a really late booking, it's a bonus and it's a residual and we'll let the OTAs pick that up for us. I don't think that's the case anymore. I think as a property manager or host, you're going to have to work out how to attract early planner, and they're our holy grail and they're the ones we love. But then you're also going to have to understand how to capture last minute Larry because he's very active in the market right now. And you don't want that getting picked up as residual. I think it's going to be an intentional strategy that we need to apply to both ends of the spectrum. So let me show you this in some headline data, and then you can start to think about how it resonates for your company. So this is 2025 arrivals in Europe. And we can see here that 23% of people booking arrived within 7 days. So almost 1 in 4 bookings were booking to arrive within just 7 days. If we look at that for Q1 arrivals in 2026, that's gone up even more. So it's a trend that we can see here. Now, the other side, that percentage of bookings, if we look at that as percentage of revenue, we can see last year, 23% booked to arrive within 7 days. That was only 12% of revenue. So reservation share and revenue share is not equal. And that's because we see the price become under pressure the closer we get to arrival, which means that we have to make sure you factor that into your strategy and understand what that will be coming in. If we flip to the other side, like the 60 to 180 days, like 2 months to 6 months, is obviously the most significant sector traditionally for your revenue. That's where we're going to take most of the revenue, but this is shrinking. So we just need to accept that the later bookings are coming in, and that means there's going to be pressure on that pricing and revenue, which we need to help you navigate so that we don't see that. So this trend we can see, if we look at it, it's very similar for most of the countries that we featured. It's even more. So if we look at Q1 arrivals for this year, in France and Germany, 36% of bookings were made to arrive within 7 days. If you don't have a strategy for last minute Larry, genuinely, it's not a residual guest anymore. It's over a third of bookings that came in Q1. So we can see here, the UK's got the shortest amount, but it's still 22%. And equally, that is growing. But understanding your guests for your property, your portfolio, you'll know what you should be seeing. So what we tend to see is larger properties or those with very fabulous amenities that are scarcer in supply should be booking earlier than those where we see an abundance. So I think you need to understand your supply landscape to see effectively what you are expecting to come in and when it should be coming in. We're seeing it all come in later. And then we take the next one. How long are they staying? So we've got when are they booking? And then how long are they staying? So we can see across 2025, across Europe, 23% were staying for just 1 or 2 days. So when I started in the industry, you could only book 7 nights or 14. It had to be a block of 7. That was all. We are way past that. And the 1 to 2 day sector is growing. So you can see in 23% last year, and so in Q1 this year, it's gone up to 25%. So it is an increasing trend that we are expecting to come in. People are looking for this flexibility. So the good news is people are traveling still, but they're booking it later and they're staying for less. And you need to make sure you've strategized for that. So have a gap night strategy, have a strategy for pricing your short breaks. You have additional operational costs for turning over and cleaning your property. So you need to make sure that's factored in to look after these shorter length of stay guests. And again, we look at it by country. All countries that we looked at seeing an increase in shorter lengths of stay. Italy seeing this really significant increase up to 44%. So when we're looking before at Italy and some of those metrics we were seeing, we can see it really prevalent in Q1 arrivals. So, getting on for half their bookings, just staying for a couple of days. So again, something to really factor in, and the guest is looking for those flexible durations. Now we flip to channels, always one that opens up a load of debate. And it's an interesting one. So we can understand which channels are booking. And you can see here, across 2025 in Europe, 31% of bookings were made by Airbnb across key data clients. And that 40% were made by Booking.com, just 28% direct. Now, this is quite different at different countries, but the sentiment is the same. It is growing. So the OTAs of Booking.com and Airbnb are gaining share at the expense of the direct channels. We can see it everywhere. Much of that is because they are very good at picking up the last minute guests. But we've just seen that the last minute bookings within 7 days is growing, hence why their share is growing as well. But what you can see is not all bookings are the same across the different channels. So if you look, if bookings made by Airbnb and Booking.com, they've got the shortest booking window. We've just seen that in the data. They stay for less. So as you're using these channels, understand the type of bookings that they'll be bringing you and absolutely use them. They're a great source. But equally, if you're only using the channels, understand that they're going to be bringing a later and later guest through for you. So again, it's a juggle. Make sure you have a strategy so you understand what they're doing and understand the type of guests that they're bringing in. And as we look at this this is a quick case study on the UK of who is winning this late market. And by late market, I said within 7 days. I consider that pretty late. We know there's a lot of same day arrivals as well. We may move on to guessing even later. But this is looking at the channel share. So when we look here, in the yellow, we have direct. So that is percentage of bookings, if you like, for properties booked outside of 91 days. So 3 months out, direct channel got 60% market share. So you can see it in the tall yellow here, and we can see that the OTAs have less than 10% share. As we get closer to arrival, so once we're in here within 7 days, The direct share has dropped to 25%. So we've gone in just, 2.5 months from 60% down to 25%. And it's Booking.com and Airbnb that are gaining this customer. So Booking.com has gone from 9% 3 months out to 30% of all bookings made less than 7 days. And Airbnb a similar trend from 8% to 26%. So you've got to think really carefully about how you are going to attract last minute Larry. It's going to be hard to compete on just price and merchandising against the OTAs. So thinking about that through is probably where I'd be having a dual strategy to say, how do we capture this guest? Because they are going to be in the market. And the last thing we look at is cancellations. And again, this is a quick UK case study, but it's something that we're seeing prevalent to say, how many cancellations are you having to cope with as hosts and property managers? And are cancellations rising? We know that our clients are telling us that it feels harder, and that's the data shows that it is. So UK cancellations have risen year after year. So it's just over 4% now cancelled in 2025. If we look at Q1 this year, 2026, we can see that again, over 4%, it's almost a percentage point higher versus Q1 2025. So we can see here. So cancellations are increasing. So again, you have to resell and another cost of acquisition. And they're not equal across the different channels. So we can see here the growth in cancellations for Q1 arrivals, Booking.com has grown significantly. So again, understanding your channels and setting your cancellation policy is so important. What you rebook, what we looked across all the data, across millions of bookings, 47% of bookings that were cancelled more than 30 days out were rebooked. And that was over the revenue of about 41% because they were rebooked cheaper. So have a really strong look at your cancellation policies. Obviously, if you're in the late channels, then you can have flexible cancellation policies because they've not got much time to book or to cancel. But equally, make sure it's factored in. Have you a strategy for reselling your cancellations? Have you talked to your owners, if you're representing owners, about what that might look? Because it's a job to resell as well. And what we find is smaller properties have more opportunity to resell. You'll know the environment that your property is in. What is your opportunity to resell? So that's a lot of data. It's a lot of broad data to give you the trends that I'd love you to start thinking about for your property and for your business. They're all interwoven, unfortunately. We can't look at one in isolation. However, I would suggest picking one or two if you're new to data and trying to understand that and don't get too bamboozled, just make a start. So first of all, demand is pretty flat. We've got this hesitancy in the market right now that we can see. We can see there are less bookings being transacted right now compared to the same time last year. I think as an industry, we're really well placed. We have ability for people to manage their costs. There's a lot of domestic and self-drive. So I think the longer the geopolitical headlines continue to dominate the news, the more opportunity you're going to have to pick up that last minute demand this summer, which is why please have a strategy for the last minute Larry to be able to capture that. So demand's pretty flat. Rates are holding up, but we saw that there's real pressure on rates as we get closer to departure. A lot of that is about the supply mix of what's left to sell. It tends to be the smaller properties, etc. But please bear in mind that your rate discipline is not necessarily a race to the bottom with rates. It's about offering the flexibility. So don't panic. Stays are shorter and later. We've spent quite a bit of time looking at that, but the cancellations are increasing and the OTAs are gaining share. So, how do you defend your repeat guests? Making sure you're reaching out to them. They're the holy grail. They're the ones we like. I suppose the advertising slant you can give about your local knowledge, your hyper local, your personality around your property, how you bring that to life. And then decouple late bookers and early bookers are different animals. So I think you're going to have to try and approach them both differently and make sure you've got a hard and fast cancellation rate that you understand. And also measure your business slightly differently if you can for those that are far out and those that are close to you, because that will help you understand what you're doing. So I always say don't fly blind. Data's never been more critical. Understanding what's going on and having the assurance that these market trends can help you, but it's how you respond to them where you'll start to win out against your competition. There's going to be a lot of demand out there late. I'd love to help you capture that. I'll leave that slide there. And I think there's going to be a final poll, Christine, but can also take any questions that anyone may have from some of the data.
Now, thank you, Sally. There was so much information in there, and it was so interesting. And yeah, I think it becomes also clear that your loyal base or your loyal customers, that's really creating the foundation for your business. And OTAs, of course, this is our yeah the channels which of course are not free of charge, but they also add their value. But they bring the last minute Larry, and there also needs some different tactics. We have one last poll question. Would you like to receive some regular market insights to help you optimize your booking? So, what Sally shared today gave a lot of knowledge and a lot of information. Is that something which is helping you? You would like to receive more? Feel free to add your comments in the vote so that we can accommodate your wishes. And like I said, we will share for sure also the slides. And we also have one last call to action. We are going to launch a survey via email where we ask you insights and your needs about traveler trends, guest insights, data. And we would like to understand how you would like to receive them, if they are helpful, how you use them so that we can actually build up on it. And so we will share this link. There's an additional email coming up, but we would love you to also participate in that. That would help us help you. Wonderful. Then let's have a look at the questions as well. We have received, I think so far, mainly one from Katrin. Thank you, Katrin, for handing it in. You asked about your setting of your account and that you also reached out to the customer success team already in regards to your minimum stay settings, whether minimum stay through or minimum stay arrival, specifically on booking.com. I will have a look at it afterwards with our CS team and we will get back to you. Obviously, it's quite crucial that these settings are right, and we, of course, should be able to accommodate them. So let's have a look. But what was for me also interesting, you asked or you mentioned 4 nights, Tuesday to Saturday, and weekends, 5 nights minimum stay. Sally, maybe a question to you. Hearing like this length of stay and what you were also just sharing in the data, do you have any tip?
There's a lot of clients say they don't want to offer shorter length of stay, that 1 or 2 nights. What we often recommend is pop it on, but charge you 4 nights, right? Don't sell it at a lower price. It's all about getting eyeballs to your property. So what I would suggest is mystery shop yourself if it's either direct or on the channels, and try a 1 night stay or a 2 night stay, and then try that 4 night stay that you think you need to stipulate. If you don't come up, you have no chance of being booked. However, you could potentially offer a 2 night for the search, but you're going to charge 4 nights. So I think sometimes think outside the box a little. It does depend on your geography and your property type, absolutely. So I would see what the rest of the market's doing. If others are offering it, I think you need to make a decision of, are you able to do it operationally, and can you price it to make sure you are still making money? So be intentional with that. But the guests are looking for shorter durations right now. It's up to you whether you want to tap into that. So if you don't, that's fine, but don't get left behind and look back and regret that you'd not changed some of those length of stays.
Yeah, I guess there also the occupancy coming into play, what you mentioned right earlier, that all of this kind of interconnects. But yeah, I was thinking the same, that with the last minutes and shorter queries, that this might be also something to
Yeah.
have a look at.
And some people only open them up really late. So people might go, look, I'll open up shorter breaks with 2 weeks to go, right? You try and preserve it as long as possible. But as it gets closer, the opportunity of doing the full 7 nights will become less because of people's planning behaviors. And we see that in the data.
Wonderful. Deli, you also mentioned just right now, and it depends where your guests are coming from. So they are guest origin. From your experience looking at all the different markets, working a lot with data, are there some things you observe at the moment?
Yeah. Yeah, the feeder markets are really important. And some countries are much more domestic to domestic, but then even the drive time comes into effect, especially around fuel costs and pricing. So we tend to see those that are traveling further, it makes sense, book in advance. So if you're doing some later marketing to particular areas, I draw a circle around and say, okay, a 3 hour drive time is reasonable. Like, so trying to get people to jump on flights is probably less so. So again, intentional with your feeder market outreach for the later market. It's something we look at a lot.
Perfect. Maybe another fun question is a spontaneous one, Celia. You mentioned also, of course, the direct bookings and wowing the customers. Have you seen in your experience anything a host did which, yeah, kind of inspired guests to return?
There's a few things. One is the personality of the host, right? Because the reason some people use the platforms is they feel safer. So they're like, okay, if anything goes wrong, I
Hmm.
can go Booking or Verbo or Airbnb. So sometimes that direct. So one is building up your reviews yourself, but then the personal outreach as soon as a guest connects, I think is really important so they don't get spooked. But it's all about showing that local sort of insider tips that you possibly don't get as a personality. So if you look at someone like beach retreats in the UK, their imagery is amazing. A lot of it is just about getting them there feeling safe. So I think your gems are your knowledge about your property and the area and the local coffee shop and the cafe that is round the corner with the pastries. It's about bringing it to life so people then get, okay, that they feel comfortable, but a lot of it is also around security. They feel safe with the platform they're booking. The repeat one is making sure you gather their details, even if it's through the OTA, so you can hopefully get them to return. Some offer a small discount, some just offer them relevant. Oh, whilst you're there, go and do that. Others go to local attractions and they'll get discounts for their guests when they're there. All about the experience when they're there. Try and build your social media so you're creating a personality for your brands and your property because that's what people buy into.
Perfect. Thank you so much. A lot of additional tips now. And I fully agree, getting insider tips when you travel is definitely always welcome.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Wonderful. Actually, we don't have any more questions, and we right on the minute. It's 45. With that, I think we would close the webinar now. Thank you, everyone, for participating. And Sally, a big, big thank you to you for sharing all of your insights. It's very rich on data and tips. Really highly appreciated. And we will share it with all the hosts and participants of the webinar afterwards.
Amazing. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank,
Good luck, everyone.
thank you.
Bye.